I'm going to talk a bit, well, I'm going to talk about the energy efficiency and what can be enabled by IoT and the connected home. So we're going to talk a bit about the grid, going to talk a bit about some work that we're doing within Intel and with collaborators, a consortium that we're involved in. But before I do that, I just want to touch a little bit on Intel itself. You know, I'm sure many of you here know about Intel. We are a world-leading semiconductor manufacturer, but one of the things you may not know as much about us is that we're actually one of the largest software companies in the world. Just be it based on measurement of software engineering heads that we have, or be it by the actual code that we output. As an example, we're the second largest contributor to Android after Google. So we're involved in a variety of different things. We also have a very large venture capital arm with over $11 billion in dollars, that is, $11 billion under investment at the moment, where we invest in a variety of different companies who are aligned with our strategic goals and directions. You can see here Intel's vision, and it's really, you know, it's a lofty one, but I think it's one that we hold dear and believe that we are impacting and achieving. And you know, we are impacting the lives of every person on Earth, or we will do. Be that not just through the traditional PCs and data centers and so on, but through the proliferation of devices and the connectivity of ultimately everything to the internet. Again, many of you may know of Gordon Moore. He was one of Intel's founders, and over 4 decades ago, he basically made an observation, and that was that every 18 months or so, the size of transistors would roughly halve, and their density would increase or double. Their cost would also halve. And this has been fundamental to kind of the shift that we've seen and the innovation that we've seen. And we had reference from the other speakers earlier today in terms of the proliferation and connectivity of devices. And what we see here is basically the IP traffic over time. So you can see kind of it really start to take off here. And I've only just taken a snapshot here from 1999 to 2011, and I'll have to ask for forgiveness. This is an old slide that I had before, so I just haven't got around to updating it. But if we were to look at that today, we would have seen that more than triple again in terms of volume. So we're still really only at the cusp of this. If I take another look at it, and look at it in terms of the number of connected devices, and look at it from the history of computing. If we go back to the 1950s, actually late 1940s, early 50s, the first digital computer was developed. In the 1960s, the first node, actually late 1960s, I think 69, the first node of ARPANET was installed, and in the early 70s, the second was, and we started to see communication between 2 different compute devices. In 1972, we saw something that many of us, or I'm sure we're all very familiar with and love and hate. The first electronic message was sent in the kind of nearest form to email that we know of today. This was followed in the 1st of January, I think it was, 1983. Basically, ARPANET converted over, and the other networks that were there converted over simultaneously to TCP/IP, which is the foundation of the internet as we know it today. And then a local guy here who you're all familiar with, Tim Berners-Lee, in 1989 produced his seminal paper on hypertext, which is basically the foundation, and this is where the internet, or sorry, the World Wide Web was born. In the late 90s, 2000s, we saw the proliferation and adoption of Wi-Fi, which again this is where we really started to see a spur in the number of connected devices. If I can just stop there for a second and just say around, late 90s, how many people here had a internet-connected device in their home? So you're probably talking, dial up and so on, okay? So a handful of people, most, a good show of hands there, so most people did. Anyone have 2 or more devices? Okay, a couple of people. I'd expect it from the audience. If we jump forward in time, to the mid-2000s and 2007, we saw the introduction of the iPhone in the US, followed in Europe in 2008, which saw, as you can see here, and was reflected, I think, in Pascal's talk earlier, a big jump in the number of connected devices. So at this stage, so let's take 2009. Anyone have more than 5 connected devices in their home? Okay, a couple of, yeah, it's good show of hands. If I jump forward in time, 2010, we saw the introduction of the iPad and basically the new form, or I suppose the adoption of the good touchscreen format and format that was introduced with the iPad and the proliferation of tablets. Again, another significant jump. And if I then jump forward again to where we are today and where we're advancing to, and by 2020, we can see again, we're, as reflected in the IP traffic, we're only at the start of this curve, really. We're starting to see industry widely adopting IoT. I'm showing energy here as obviously as a specific one, and also the connected home. And it's really those 2 pieces now that I want to talk a bit more about. If we look at it in the connected home today, obviously entertainment, and as was shown by Pascal earlier, entertainment in the form of music is a key piece that has been driving connectivity in the home, but it's still relatively in relative levels of infancy. If we look at another area that's kind of been driving connectivity is security. We have seen the traditional alarm systems just in their most basic sensors sending notifications, but they're still, again, pretty primitive and basic. Where we see as another beachhead that can bring this movement forward and can, and really, I suppose, why part of the reason why you see this is energy, is because there's a clear trail of money. There's a clear trail to cash, as there is with the entertainment and security areas. But by bringing the 3 together, we can start to see a collective benefit that consumers can easily understand, and can also see a difference in their existing bills that they pay today, not incremental bills that we're looking for. I'll just give you a quick rundown as to why. Why is energy so important? Why can it add this benefit? And just to do that, I just want to give you a quick overview of the grid as it was and as it will be. And I suppose if we look traditionally, generation was one directional, i.e. it was centrally generated by large industrial players, and it was just sent out to the homes and industry and businesses. And it was really done in a fairly crude manner, and in fact is still largely done in a crude manner today, in that they just took forecasts and said, this is how much energy we need, we'll generate a bit more and burn that off, and so be it. However, obviously we've seen a transition with centrally generated renewables, which bring to the mix a lot of variability. The wind blows or it doesn't. You can tell to some extent by forecasts how effective it's going to be. The sun shines or it doesn't. Again, clouds, they're a nasty interfering factor in that one. This is creating a lot of flux on the grid. Add to that the distribution of renewables out at the medium voltage and low voltage networks, i.e. down at the local levels, be it from the prosumer perspective or be it from small generators who are connecting into the grid. This has now created a bi-directional generation and information flow requirement. So we're seeing increasing connectivity, increasing need for information flow across all of these to understand what is happening today, and also to be able to actuate devices, actuate transformers throughout the grid. If I step forward into the home, we see that there's potential here with the replacement of certain devices or the connectivity of certain devices, that we can start to mitigate some of this impact. By being able to remotely control devices, we can make them respond to the variability that's brought into the grid through the introduction of renewables. And we can do this in a way that will deliver benefits, not just to the grid operators, but also to the users of the home through increased comfort and reduced cost. But obviously that requires connectivity down to the home as well. All of that, it's all wonderful. It's all great. We can do it, right? There's no problem. Actually, in France, they've been doing something along these lines for a long time. Water heaters throughout France are connected up. They have an RF signal sent to them, and they can shut them off at any time and switch them on because they have a very large nuclear basis in France. However, it's still fairly crude, and they just do it with water because they don't want to upset people too much. Our approach is really looking to try and ensure that the consumer is at the center of this. Great, you can reduce my bills, you can maybe increase my comfort at certain times, but if there's no hot water when I need it, or if there's no heat when I'm getting up on a cold Saturday morning, that's not good to me. Or if I've got an electric vehicle and all of a sudden there's no charge in the battery, that's no good. So what we're doing is we're trying to take the data from all of those existing sources within the home. So for example, your security system. There's motion sensors throughout the rooms. Why can't that data be used by a device within the home to add value, to predict what's happening within the home, to predict how space is used, and then use that to inform the heating system to say, well, actually, don't bother heating this space at this time because no one's going to be in that room. Heat this space over that space. Also to inform the consumer and ensure that they are getting the service they want, i.e. the grid is saying this is what they want to do. We're predicting that you need something else. How do you want us to operate this? So by doing behavioral prediction, utilizing existing data within the home or supplementing that through additional sensors and so on, we can effectively determine how users live within their home and within the spaces and optimize those, which in itself can drive efficiency, i.e. reduce the spaces that you're heating when they're not needed, or ensuring that they are when they are. So as I said, we can deliver cost and comfort efficiencies through that. Just in terms of how we're going about this, as I said, key to this is really the connectivity, the acquisition of data. So we need to ensure that those systems are starting to open up. Instead of all individual proprietary standards and so on, which has been fine. Take my home security system at home. As I said, I have PIR sensors in most rooms. I have door, window sensors. I have various different things. But they just send data back to my home security system. And that's basically where that data ends. Just only sends alerts if there's a problem. If that data is made more widely available to, as I said, another device within the home, along with data on my energy consumption, for example, I can start to determine, well, exactly what's happening within the home. If I add into that maybe data in relation to my water consumption, be it taken from a pump or be it taken from a valve on the system that has a pressure sensor, I can determine, okay, maybe there's a leak. I can do something about that. I can shut off the water. I can also do things like advise the home occupants in terms of how they can be more efficient, how they can, if they want, avail of more renewable energy that's coming onto the grid. So that all takes, obviously, the analytics and also control. And the other side to this is that by making this data available, and I'm not necessarily saying here that we make all this data freely available, pump all the data out of your home and send it to Google or wherever, but in terms of we do this analytics within the home and then only expose certain anonymized data. But we can deliver additional services, be it from the appliance manufacturers being able to do analytics on the performance of their appliances within their home and be able to detect when something's actually performing outside of specification, Or maybe another example could be someone altogether different, an electronics retailer who can see, well, actually, I've got this A-rated appliance, be it a fridge, that I can offer to you in exchange for your appliance that's performing in a very inefficient manner, i.e. your fridge. I can offer it to you and just take it in a kind of ESCO model. And obviously integration with existing markets, but all of this fundamentally needs to be based around and based on a foundation of security, maintaining security and privacy, and fundamentally trust. So how do we get the trust of the consumer? And as I said, security is key to that, and also maintaining privacy. As we know from just general compute, the number of viruses and malicious software that is out there is ever growing. This is a real challenge. As we start to connect the home and connect other devices, this is going to be an increasing challenge. Imagine, for example, if all of the heating systems that are electrical, we'll take as an example just for now, but even you could apply gas as well, all of those devices are connected. If someone can maliciously control those and send a message for them to shut off, you could cause a blackout. You could cause London to be shut down. So there is real risk as we connect things. So we need to build security in as a fundamental building block. An example of where we're doing some work in this space, this is a collaborative project that Intel is doing on the island of Ireland. We include basically all of the ecosystem players, from the utility company, SSE is the company there, I'm sure you're familiar with them. Also the grid operators in the form of the TSO and the DSO are involved. And also we have an aggregator company. But literally what we're doing here is we are aggregating up, utilizing the model that I talked about before where we're doing behavioral analytics. We're understanding what the availability is of these different appliances. So these are kind of water heaters and storage heaters and then electric vehicles. We're aggregating up what the availability is, i.e. in terms of their capacity to take energy. We're understanding when the consumer needs that energy, i.e. when they need to travel somewhere or when they need heat or hot water. And then we're able to offer that back to the grid as a service. So we can respond to problems on the grid, i.e. be it a frequency event where, or be it an increase in renewables and excess of renewables, which may otherwise need to be, the supply may need to be stopped, or be it dealing with peak demand, i.e. 6 o'clock in the evening when everyone's come home, switched on the TV, switched on the kettle, switched on the oven, we can avoid heating or charging electric vehicles or whatever it might be. Now, obviously, I'm not suggesting we apply this model to the likes of TVs and so on. Consumer experience needs to be at the center of it. But if we can take other appliances, other large loads, and manage those in this method, then we can deliver significant benefits to the grid. In summary, we've seen that there has been and will continue to be exponential growth in the number of connected devices. We're still only seeing it in its infancy. If you take, there's different projections of it. I know Cisco have talked about 50 billion devices by 2026. There's others who talk about 20 billion. Doesn't matter. It's exponential growth, and it's going to continue for the foreseeable future. We need to ensure that we can establish trust at the center of that. So, and also that we design solutions around consumers and around the end users. The security threats are rising, and they continue to rise. There's lots that can be done to mitigate against this by designing security in up front and also monitoring it as an ongoing performance. And we can also get huge efficiencies and also increased user experience through the effective connection and utilization of standards of all of these devices within the home. So that's really all I have to say today. So thank you very much for your time.